Hey guys, so today I want to talk about something that a lot of founders that you see, even the big ones here on YouTube, they're not going to talk about because they're always talking about money and revenue like it's the primary driver of the business that you want to build. You hear so many people in there and they're talking about, oh, I built this business and it's doing $400,000 a month, or I built this business, it's doing $30,000 a month, whatever that metric is. But what if I said that defining your business by key metrics and stating your goals in that way could drive you towards the wrong destinations and the wrong outcomes? What if I told you that that's not actually the determinant of what you actually want to build? Instead, what if I said that to build your dream business, you've got to get crystal clear in the $1 million destinations? I am sure you're asking, what are $1 million destinations? What are you talking about? Well, that's what I'm here to tell you about today. I want to tell you about the things that you actually need to be crystal clear in to make sure that you build the business that you want to. And how do I know this? Well, I've built the multi-million dollar business that did not bring me happiness and joy in the life that I wanted to live. I always thought, hey, if I build this $5-10 million business, it's going to give me a certain life that I want to live. And I'm here to tell you, like, that's not true. And I know this because I also work with dozens of other founders who have the same problem. They all thought, hey, if I build this business to a certain place, it's going to get me the life that I want. But what most of them find is that they're living in a role that they absolutely hate. They're doing work that they hate, and they're just not really able to create the freedom in their life that they want to create. So what if I told you that if you set the right destinations, you can actually build the roadmap to give you what you want, both in your business and in your life? That if you keep defining your business by the wrong things, namely those metrics and dollar amounts, you do risk heading in the wrong direction and optimizing for the wrong things. So let's dig in a little bit today and talk about what this can look like. As I said before, I've worked with dozens of other founders, and this actually holds true for myself as well. I keep seeing it over and over and over again, where from the outside looking in, they have a seemingly successful business. Their numbers are pretty impressive. Some of them are hitting seven figures with, a great gross margin, but most of them, they feel like they're stuck, or they feel like they're drowning. They don't know what to do to get out of this place that they've actually kind of trapped themselves into as they were putting up the walls of their business. And the reason that this happens is because they never really just sat down and defined what success would really look like for them beyond just generating a certain amount of revenue or a certain amount of gross margin. They're really defining success by other people's standards. And I just want to debunk the myth that you have to do that. So in this video, I'm going to show you, what your $1 million destinations are, why they matter, and then how to use them to build the roadmap that's going to actually get you to where you want to go. Look, numbers alone, again, they cannot define success. They are a measure of performance, of how much you're succeeding in building the business that you want to create. But the numbers don't have to just look like revenue and gross margin and all of those financial metrics that everybody talk about. There's some other key metrics that we can use to actually define whether or not you are building a truly intentional business. So first and foremost, when you lead with metrics instead of clearly defined outcomes that are built around your primary mission and your primary purpose, and building that dream business that you've always dreamed of, you actually risk building a business that's going to result in the wrong outcomes. So this usually looks like high churn. If you're in a client-based business, it shows up as greater inefficiencies that actually reduce your gross margin. It will show up as you spending way too much time in firefighting mode, and that shows up, as burnout or just feeling really drained by the end of the week. It also shows up as like your calendar is plugged with too many calls that don't actually lead to the outcomes that you're trying to create for yourself. And it shows up as, you just feeling completely drained and wiped out by the end of the week, and not living in that space where you're really energized to do the work that you really truly love to do. And it can show up as, you having a business that actually consumes your life rather than having one that actually builds the life that you were wanting to create in the first place. The reason that you started this business, I mean, let's be honest, most of us started our businesses in order to create a certain amount of freedom. For me, that is freedom to have a very flexible schedule that's defined on my own terms. It doesn't necessarily mean I work less than 60 hours a week. It just means I want my schedule to be super flexible and to be defined on my own terms. So as I said before, metrics do matter. They measure the performance, they measure success in achieving the outcomes that you actually do want to create. So revenue, gross margin, retention, or churn, whichever way you want to measure that, they do show progress, and they do help you define whether or not you're successful in the outcomes that you're defining, but they're not the destination. They're not what you should be describing as the point that you want to get to. So here's an example. If you want, the way you should state your outcomes is really, hey, I want to serve 50 high ticket clients with a seamless client experience rooted in a key process that creates, again, a certain experience for your clients and allows me to fully step into the role of CEO and visionary. This is a very intentional and purposefully driven outcome that you want to create for yourself, your business, your team, if you have one. And how this shows up is, those 50 high ticket clients, that is $500,000 in MRR. So that's a measurable performance metric. The seamless client experience that's optimized for efficiency and growth, that shows up as 50% gross margins. The key process, which is, the key client experience you want to create, which is your differentiator, that shows up as a less than 10% churn rate or a 90% retention rate, whichever way you want to state that. And then you as a CEO looks like 0% client work, in really infrequently stepping in to have to fulfill on the firefighter role that you have to play a lot of times when churn shows up inadvertently or unexpectedly. So when you get more clear in both what you actually want to build and how you state it, there's less risk involved. You get super clear and you get driven to actually build what you are stating that you want to create. Your team now feels like they have a purpose and a mission, and they understand, again, what you want to create, and they can get fully behind you and supportive of what you're trying to build. When you state it just as metrics, it becomes often like a frantic race for your team members to achieve those big numbers without being intentional in the processes that they're building. And so when you do that, that actually adds in generally a measure of complexity, because people start to just kind of do their own thing and start to create their own processes and as a means to hit that, new metric that you threw out for the gross margin target. It also creates a lot of confusion. Instead of focusing on building a seamless client experience, they're now focused again on high gross margin. So what does it look like to actually get crystal clear in the destinations and the outcomes that you want to create? Well, it looks like you clearly stating, again, your vision, your ideal role that you want to live in, the client experience that you want to create, and the metrics that are going to measure the success of whether or not you're getting there. So what does it look like to actually define your $1 million vision that I'm talking about as your $1 million destination? Well, first, state, why did you start your business? What was the purpose of you starting this business in the first place? What did you want to create for yourself, for your family, for your lifestyle? For what kind of impact did you want to create on your clients? Why was it this business? Why was it not, an accounting firm? Why was it not another type of coaching business? Why did you want to start this business? And what does your $1 million freedom look like to you? What would it look like to have more freedom? So what would it look like to live in the role doing the work that you love and nothing else? Get down, define it, write out what your typical day looks like, and then write out what your ideal day would look like if you could spend all of your time in your actual zone of genius. What kind of business are you actually building? I think this is an important question that most founders don't actually always ask themselves at the onset of building their business. What's your exit strategy? Are you building a lifestyle business where you do only work 30 or 40 hours a week and you create a sufficient amount of income to just afford the life that you want to live? Are you building a legacy business that you want to pass down to your kids? Is it a fourth generation apple orchard? I actually visited that just the other day. Fourth generation apple orchard that you want to hand down to your kids one day. What does that look like? Are you building a business that you want to sell? When my husband and I started our multi-million-dollar company, the intention behind it was that we would sell it within 10 years. That was always the goal. We sold it much more quickly than that, but that was always the goal. And so we built it in a certain way that would create a business that we could actually position to sell to someone in the future. All of this is going to actually define and help to shape your offers, your systems, your team structure, your processes, and the 4 Ps that we're going to talk about in just a few moments. Next, clarify the direction. Clarify where you're at now and clarify where you want to go in the future. Again, what is the purpose for your business? Why does it exist? What is your vision for the future? Like, what does that big picture vision look like? And then the mission, what's the mission behind it? How are you actually going to get to that big picture vision? Start to try and put it into words a little bit. Start to try and just translate all of your thoughts and everything that you have going around. Get back to the roots and start to put these things in place. And then I want you to take it and I want you to align that vision with the why, the thing that you started to define in the beginning. What is your first year vision? What are you going to create in the next 12 months to help you get to that big picture vision, to the place that you said you wanted to go? Uh, the 3 year vision, like what is the momentum you're actually building for? And can you do it more quickly with the right tools and people in place? And then what's your 10 year vision? What type of lifestyle do you want to see yourself living in 10 years? What's the impact that you want to create? What's the legacy that you want to leave behind? Next, let's talk about your ideal role. Like, what is the role that you want to live in? What is the work that you love doing most? What, tasks light you up? What energizes you? What makes you feel like, oh, I haven't worked as, you can work for 3 hours and you feel like you haven't worked a single minute. What keeps you going, and makes you just feel fulfilled at the end of the day? And then I want you to do the opposite and talk, really focus in on what the work is that actually drains you. What do you hate doing? What do you do? What are the tasks that when you handle them, at the end of the day, you feel totally drained and like you cannot, talk or look at anyone? What are those tasks? And what do you think you can hand off to someone in the future? And then what's the role that you want to grow into? A lot of people start their business, and when they start it, they are operating as the operator. Like they started, they were a great plumber, and so they have a plumbing business. Or and I know they talk about this in the E-Myth a lot, but you were a baker, so you started a baking business. Is that the place that you want to live in forever as the ideal operator and client service provider? Or do you want to grow into the CEO and visionary? Or maybe if you're an ops person, you want to grow into, the COO and hire a fractional CEO to help you come in and strategically design your business. What does that look like for you? And what would it look like for you to have that type of growth in the future? The next destination that I really want you to focus in and hone in on is, what is the client experience that I want to create? The client experience, customer experience, user experience, however you define it. What is that I want to create? That is your key differentiator. Look, the markets are getting much more crowded out there. And so the one thing that you have to really set yourself apart from everybody else is the experience that you create for your clients and customers and how they feel about interacting with you and your business. So I want you to get really down and dirty here, started to define what this looks like. How do you want clients to feel when they do interact with you or your business? What values or principles should show up when you're delivering your service or you're producing your products? What kind of reputation do you want your business to have? Another key part of your client experience is really defining who you serve. Like what is your ideal client profile? Who do you actually serve? What do they value in the experience that you bring that other people don't necessarily lean into? This could be speed, it could be support, it could be personalization, it could be simplicity, it could be one key factor or pain point that you are actually honed in to transform for them. And then, does your current pricing and delivery actually match the journey that you've designed? Look, if you are optimizing for a white glove experience, does your pricing match that white glove experience? Because I can tell you right now that if it doesn't, and your clients start to experience friction between your pricing and your value, even if it's your prices are lower than the value you're actually providing, that is going to actually have them question whether or not you can actually do what you said you were going to do. Conversely, if you're pricing too high and your experience, if you're pricing for white glove experience, but your experience is less than optimal, again, they're going to start to have questions about price and value. And that's when you're going to start to see churn, low conversion rate on your sales, and some other key metrics just show up as much lower than optimal for you. Finally, start to take a moment to talk about, the outcomes that you want to create here within your client experience. Like, what is the tangible outcome that you're producing, the deliverable, the results, the transformation? What's the experiential outcome that you want to produce for your clients? How will they feel when they work with you? And then what agreements or standards are going to ensure that you are a true partner to your clients and that you're performing what you said you would do when you said you would do it? What does that look like? You need to sit down and just clearly define it, because this is going to help create the client journey map that's going to really help us speak into, again, those 4 P's, the processes, people, performance, and priorities that we're going to use to build the roadmap to get your business to where you want it to go. And finally, the final destination in the $1 million destinations are your $1 million metrics. And look, this is not just restricted to everything that happens in your business. This includes your personal metrics as well. So personal metrics, like how much do you need to pay yourself to live the lifestyle that you want to live? How many hours a week do you want to work? How many hours do you want to be in a certain type of task? How much time or how much flexibility do you want to have in the time that you're spending in your business? I can tell you right now that the amount of time I work is not as important to me as the flexibility in the hours that I work. That is much more important. So maybe the same holds true for you, but you need to sit down and really get intentional and define what it looks like for you. Then we're going to talk about your core business metrics. So that is your revenue targets, that is your gross margin, that is, again, your pay, that is CAC, LTV, that is churn or retention. All of those are core metrics that we need to measure in your business. Now, as we get more sophisticated and we start to look at additional outcomes that you want to create, we're going to start to look at some other metrics that are important to determine if we're successful in those outcomes that we want to create, like conversion rates, like repeat customers to your website, and some other things that really define or hone in on the success of very specific and prioritized outcomes that you want to build in your business. But for now, in these key $1 million metrics, we're looking at your overall business as a big picture. And so those core business metrics are going to be super important in determining if we're getting to the place that you say you want to go. So what happens when you don't optimize for your $1 million destinations and you just say, hey, I want to build a $5 million business? Well, that's when you start to practice those spaghetti noodle strategies that I've talked about in several other videos. What are spaghetti noodle strategies, you ask? They're when you're just fling spaghetti noodles against the wall to see what sticks. And that actually results in you not living into the business that you actually want to build. You're going to spend your time in firefighting mode. You're going to spend your time in in discovery of places that are of things that might actually get you to the destination that you said you wanted to get to, $5 million. But maybe it's work you hate. Maybe it's work that's not optimized for your ICP. Maybe it is work that actually results in lower gross margins because you're asking your team to shift left, then shift right, then shift forward, back to right, back to left. And so they never get to be masterful in anything that they create. When you optimize for the wrong things, when you optimize for those metrics, again, like you end up driving towards the wrong destinations in a lot of cases. And that's going to show up eventually as you feeling like this business is drowning you. But if we instead optimize for the $1 million destinations, we can build the business that we love. And then we can start to create the roadmap to get us there. And that roadmap is really comprised of 4 key elements. I call it the 4 Ps. That is the processes, the people, the priorities, and the performance that is going to help us get to where we want to go. So once we, again, start to define out your vision, your ideal role, and your client experience, we can determine, like, what does your tech stack look like? What are the processes that we need to put into place to make sure that all of these elements combined are getting us to the $1 million destinations? What do we need to prioritize to start to create the key transformation that's going to let you live in your ideal role or create your ideal client experience? Like, those are the things, when we have that big picture vision, we can start to build this roadmap to make sure that we are efficiently getting to the place that you said you want to go. But if you don't take the time to define those big picture outcomes in the beginning, again, all of these little, the 4 Ps and this roadmap, you could end up, driving around the country just to get, start off in North Carolina, drive all the way around the country, go through Maine, go through California, everywhere else, just to get back to North Carolina by a certain date. And that might not be optimal for you. The key question you should always be asking yourself in your business and when you're trying to decide what to do and when to do it is, what is the outcome that I'm trying to achieve? And so in this case, it's building your dream business. And your dream business looks like those $1 million destinations that you have defined. So by asking yourself this question, you are going to be able to correctly prioritize what you should be working on and align yourself, your team, and anyone else involved, sometimes your spouse, anyone else involved in your business behind the projects that you are taking on. You reduce the risk that you are going to go down the wrong path and waste your time, your family's time, your spouse's time, your team's time on anything that doesn't really matter and isn't going to drive the real results. The other thing that I most often see is that when I work with my clients and we get crystal clear in exactly what this looks like, we often double or triple their revenue in a very short time frame. It's Elon Musk that says that the most common mistake of software engineers is that they optimize for the thing that shouldn't be there in the first place. But I would say that's of founders as well. Like, we generally, especially in the beginning stages of our business, we optimize for the things that shouldn't even be there in the first place. And this causes us to lose a lot of time, a lot of momentum, and it causes a lot of heartache and, drained mental capacity and burnout. And we don't have to have that in our businesses. So start by asking yourself, what is the one outcome that I'm trying to achieve, and prioritize everything through that. And your primary outcome with your business should be those $1 million destinations and building the business that you have always dreamed about building. If you'd like a little more clarity in how to do this and some free resources, opportunities to join, co-working sessions and masterminds, even some networking and coffee chats, join my free school community. There are a ton of free resources available to you. We do have co-working sessions, we do have masterminds, and they're all optimized to help you build the business that you have always dreamed of and get you to those $1 million destinations.